Okay, we're back. Tape number 8 here. Okay, last we were taken off with here, we had Meier in tow on our 76th contact on Monday, May 23rd, 1977. And he'd been asking Meier where Psyche was, and she said that, well, she'd been gone. She was staying away so as not to interfere with the development of the new community and the new house, because Psyche had a way of always wanting to be involved in everything, which is getting too close to Billy and the other people. So she felt it best that she stay away for a while, and it had been about 3 months. Meier warns Billy that the Befath are causing more problems, and they are getting ready to do something. They're very concerned about Billy building the center and founding a center for spiritual growth and truth, and they're very concerned about the security. She says also to find out that many members of Billy's group are being influenced by the Fath already, that they are projecting thoughts into their subconscious, unable to defend themselves and discern where these thoughts are coming from. Already many members of the group are finding themselves influenced by this and developing wrong thinking. And that certainly would explain, Billy says, why we're having so many problems in the group, so many arguments and egos are flying all over the place. Some of the members want to be commanders and leaders and think they're better than the other people. The irony is that none of these people in previous lives have been any person of particular note or value. They were just housewives, potters, etc. But they're all acting like now that suddenly they're very, very important to the mission and that the earth just can't get along without them. Well, Billy is returned home, and he had been gone actually for about an hour or so, but she put him back so it only looked like he'd been gone about 15 minutes. Because when he left, everybody was working on the house, and they saw him walk away to the east and leave. And now, 15 minutes later, he pops back coming up from the west, and it would have been impossible for him to actually get around to this location that fast. Because of the terrain there, he would have had to have gone like, clear around a hill, and there's no roadways or anything for transportation. So it would have been impossible for him to actually come back from that direction, except for the fact that Meier moved in time. The 77th contact was on Tuesday, May 31st, 1977. Patah at this time tells Billy that after listening to the thoughts of many of the members in the group after they've been working together for several months, that there are certain members of the group who are just not going to make it in this community. There are problems with some of them, massive egos where they think they're too much better than the other people. There are some people also have very low self-esteem, insecurity complexes, which won't be able to get along in a community atmosphere. Sounds kind of normal already, doesn't it? So they've been monitoring their thoughts for about 3 months, and Patah admits they're not too sure exactly how to advise Billy about this. So they turned the information over to the High Council, hoping they would come up with something. Patah again warns Billy about the evil of the Befath and for security. He tells him that there are very difficult times ahead, and during the next 12 months there's going to be lots of difficulties in the group. Some of the group members may actually desert and leave. The next contact is on the 78th contact, which is Wednesday, July 6th in 77. At this contact, Meier shows up with Alina. Alina is a Lyrian. She's from a planet called Sater, S-A-T-E-R, in the constellation Lyra. It's 157.3 million light years away from us. Their son's name is Mel. Some of these names just crack me up. Here's a son named Mel. We'll have a planet named Bob and a a moon named Nancy or something. I love these names. The interesting part was that Billy once before, when he had a contact and first met Meier, he was able to play with her beam pistol, and has some pictures with that. Alina brings him a gun also, and he's able to take pictures of Alina's arm and body and so forth, but he has to black out the face on the negatives, which he does. And he gets to shoot a few holes in trees and twigs and things. And this is an old gun that she has. It's about 600 years old. And there are a few pictures of it around. I show it at talks every now and then. It has 2 little boxes on it. And when you pull the trigger, the 2 boxes, I call them boxes, are just little containers on the gun that control certain radiations. And when you pull the trigger, It just dissolves things. There's no sound or light, but anything within a range of 37.2 kilometers just dissolves without a trace. Only that place where it first hits something is there like a carbonizing or a little burn mark there when it first hits something. She says also on this weapon, if you pull the trigger back farther, that it releases only the front box where the two elements don't mix together, and it has like a self-defense mechanism. It doesn't kill someone. It has the effect of like drugging them or knocking them out somehow. Their newer weapons are much more advanced, she says. They're far smaller, and they're also connected to the brain waves of the person who owns the weapon. Only that person could actually fire the weapon, and it's more sophisticated where you can actually almost think what you want the weapon to do, what you want it to hit, and it will just aim at it and fire for you. So it's far more sophisticated, but they didn't have one of those for Billy to play with. Billy asked about her ship. Wanted to know a little bit about Meier's ship, because he noticed the animals didn't run away when the beam ship came. And she commented, well, my ship is not a beam ship like Semyasi's is. It's a different kind of ship. And it works off a different principle. It's not a beam ship, so it doesn't produce these electromagnetic vibrations and oscillations that the animals can pick up. Her ship flies by what she called a densification of atmospheric gases. These gases are then compressed and exhausted somehow. So it sounds almost like a rocket sort of thing, where some sort of sophisticated system of gas pressure that they used. She says it cannot fly in outer space. It was just designed to be used in atmosphere around planets. So a little different ship here. Meier and Alina spend a little time praising Billy about how well he knows so many different forms of manual work, carpentry, electrician, and so forth. And they keep a lot of praise again on him about being such a logical thinker and so advanced and so different than all the rest of us earthworms. So again, all through the contact notes, Billy is constantly being praised and kind of patted on the head and told how good he is. And it's obvious by this time that, they're doing this all the time to keep his spirits up, keep him going, keep him on his mission. It's just a constant thing all the time. The 79th contact was on Saturday, July 26th, 77. Billy's not feeling very well, and he thinks that he's been poisoned from some sausage. Semyasi has returned, and he's having a contact with her, and she says it's not food poisoning. And she brings him into the ship for an examination, and right away uses some little device which reveals in his blood that there are some sort of parasites inside of him. She gets excited right away, and she pulls some little device out that she puts next to the skin and turns it on, and takes about 6 seconds, and she says, there, now all parasites have been eliminated from your body. At the moment, your body is totally free of any disease and any parasites. So I'd sure love to have one of those little devices. She warns Billy that something's gone wrong here, and she can't understand, where these parasites have come from, so she's going to look into it. She also, on that contact, warns Billy that there are very dangerous egos forming in the group, which are going to cause a lot of problems for him, and it's going to make it very difficult for the group to come together. Billy asks if Quetzal is going to go through with his promise of a demonstration of the ships for the rest of the group, and she says at this time, well, he had planned to, but he is so concerned by all of the ego, jealousy, and anger that's raging in the group trying to form this community that he's going to hold off on that, and he'll let Billy know later on. On the 80th contact, which was Wednesday, August 24th, 1977, Semyasi is moving her ship next to a tree to meet Billy when she picks up really strong feelings of pain from Billy. Well, this is kind of a surprise to her. She's never felt this before. Something's wrong. So she reacts kind of quickly, and pulls the ship away real quickly and causes the top of the tree to be damaged, which later on she moves the tree so it what did not exist in a time when it could get hurt. But she's hurt this tree, and she's feeling bad about that. So she goes back and reports to Quetzal that something's wrong with Billy. They look into it and find that Billy had been attacked by some little critters. Apparently these Befath guys had put some mechanical-looking little bugs in a tree on Billy's property. The little mechanical bugs, whatever they were, would fly around, letting out some sort of bacteria in the air. And this was what was poisoning Billy and causing his thinking to change. Apparently everybody at the community, at the group there, this bacteria had gotten into them also. So this might explain a little bit why they're having trouble getting along. The outshot of it was that Semjase says we're going to destroy all these little bugs in the tree where that's coming from. And Billy says, how are you going to do this? And she says, well, I use this device here in the ship. It's kind of like a beam device, like those pistols you played with. But we can control the intensity of it and how far, the range is. And Billy says, can I give it a try? She says, surely, okay, let me show you how to work it. And she's explaining a little bit about it, how you move this device and for aiming, and you move this little handle here and so forth to make it work. And she says, I'm 38 meters from the tree. Let me move in a little bit closer. And as she's moving the ship, Billy goes ahead and fires. And she gets a little excited, like, what have you done? Wait a minute. I haven't got to stop the ship yet. He says, that's okay. It's all done. And she looks, and she's very surprised that he had figured out how to use the equipment so easily, and he'd accomplished the task so simply. And he says, it's really no big deal. It's a very simple device, and anybody living on Earth who's used to messing with mechanical mechanisms could figure this thing out very simply. Probably all these kids we had that play video games would have figured it out in a flash. But she was a little surprised because they're not used to doing mechanical things, and when that device is installed in the ship, she says it normally takes them an hour or two to be checked out on it and trained how to use it. So apparently they're not too mechanical minded. They probably have droids and things that do so much for them that they're just not used to figuring things out on their own. On the 81st contact, which was Sunday, September 4th, 1977, a rather unusual thing has happened. Apparently the B'Phath have shot at Billy's house. Apparently what has happened, they've aligned themselves with some ETs from the Pegasus system, who are really rather kind of wicked in thinking, apparently. These beings have a weapon somehow that takes thought energy, concentrates it, they can aim it at something, and it causes vibrational oscillations that cause matter to break down. And they've actually fired at the back of Billy's house and destroyed part of the wall on the back of Billy's house. Well, Billy listens to the explanation of how it worked and who did it, and he's kind of upset, but he doesn't seem to be as upset as Semjase is. The outshot of it was that Quetzal stations a telemeter device over Billy's house for security, so they'll know if any of the B'Phath ships come around again. They repair the wall, by the way, and make it even stronger, and Billy's making jokes about, will this wall now stand up to those B'Phath knaves? But the humor again escaped Semjase. She did announce to him that early when she was explaining about the effects of the Bermuda Triangle and the two giant suns whose radiations were causing the effects, that the Earth had moved out of a position where it was now affected by those. It was no longer affected by those radiations. So the effects of the Bermuda Triangle as far as radiations from these suns causing time movement is over as of July 10th, 77. It's still possible that there could be other events there, but it wouldn't be caused by these radiation effects. Some of the effects in the Bermuda Triangle and the Japanese Devil's Sea, as they call it, and around Madagascar, are also caused by magnetic storms on Earth, climate changes, crime, etc. Not all events were actually caused by the time warp. Well, an interesting thing is happening at the community. The rules for living at the community are being drawn up. I've read them. I was a member for a brief time. I was called a special member because I didn't live there, and I was member number 50 for a while, year or so. And so I had a copy of the rules, and they are very strict. For the current group who lives there, in effect, you live only for the community. You cannot think outside of the community or against any interest. In other words, open-mindedness is kind of suppressed in a way. It's a very strict community. Far too strict for me. It was very good that I didn't live there. I wasn't able to conform to the rules anyway, even living over here in America, which led me to, resign myself and quit doing that. So. Anyway, the rules are drawn up and the community is actually forming. Billy is given plans to build their meditation room, which they're going to do. Billy's has a place over there called the meditation room where they've built a pyramid exactly to the specifications given to them by Ptah. And as a regular practice, all of the members use the meditation facility. For those of you who are into astral projection, you'll enjoy this next little part here. On the 83rd contact on Saturday, September 10th in 77, It was explained to Billy that the Pleiadians were having contacts with a man who they just called Mr. G, and he was performing some important work for them, and they hadn't heard from him in several weeks, and there seemed to be a problem, and Semjase just asked casually if Billy could look into it, that she felt somehow he was being influenced by some other outside energy force, and didn't know what really had happened to Mr. G. So Billy waits till night, about 2 in the morning, and he astrally projects his thoughts to Mr. G. And his thoughts approach Mr. G. He sees him lying in his bed sleeping at night, and he notices that there's a field of energy, not a blue one but a violet one, around Mr. G. And he says, well, I have to get through this band of energy around him so I can get into his aura to actually find the thoughts that his subconscious are creating and to find out what's been going on with Mr. G. So he tries to move through this violet energy force that is surrounding Mr. G, and he is repelled immediately with this tremendously strong force. He finds himself knocked unconscious. Immediately he's back into his bed, and as soon as his consciousness returns, he notices that some invading energy has pushed right inside of his material body in his chest and threatens to kill him. That's what he said. He says he's losing his breath, and this force was so powerful he suddenly was kind of fearful for his life. With his strongest blockade abilities, he fought and resisted this force, and for 15 minutes he had to fight it tremendously to push it out of his body. Then the force left. Well, he later, when he had a contact with Semjase, explained this to her, and she was very surprised that Billy had actually been attacked by this force. They had no idea. And she says, well, don't concern yourself with it any longer. I certainly wouldn't want you to get hurt. And she would look into it and get back to him, which she does. Well, it turns out that she herself tries to get in through this violet energy block that's surrounding Mr. G, and can't get through herself, and she's hit full force with it, and is knocked back, knocked unconscious. Her sister Plea, who is standing by with some sort of device on board the ship, to protect her, intercedes with this device and separates the energy and pushes it out of the ship and saves her. But she says, Billy, this force was so strong that I couldn't believe that you actually survived it. And Billy said, well, what he had done was a trick that was taught to him years ago when he was learning these techniques in India, whereby that you leave traces of yourself. When you astral project, you don't allow the energy to follow you back to where you originated from. Instead, he left traces of his feelings in New Delhi and in Rangoon. So it broke up the ability of this energy to follow him back, and he did not receive a full impact then of this energy, lest he probably would be dead. Instead, he just got a minor part of the energy that hit Semjase. Ptah is called in, looks into the situation, and finds out that indeed Mr. G is being surrounded by a heavy form of energy, and he explains what it is. He says on the planet Earth there are literally billions of people who follow and align themselves with certain religious thinking. In other words, their thoughts all form a pretty much the same idea. He says that ETs who want to take advantage of this, what they can do is they can focus in on these common thoughts of billions of people. They can then concentrate that energy, because all that energy is concentrated on one idea. It's all energy. In this case, it was religious energy, where billions of people are concentrating on the idea of Jesus and Christianity. That energy then was taken and redirected by these other ETs and was used to create this energy block around Mr. G. So what Billy was running up against was actually the concentrated force of thought of billions of people being used for rather wicked devices. Mr. G then was feeling somehow that he was in touch with a beautiful higher spiritual life force, which he wasn't. He was merely being manipulated by some other wicked intelligence. So Ptah was explaining this to Billy, and explaining under no circumstances should Billy make any attempt to contact Mr. G or let him know at all that he had tried to interfere. They didn't want to take the chance of whatever was causing this energy force getting back to Billy and getting a hold of him or any of the members of the group. Okay, we're up to the 88th contact. It's Monday, October 17th, 1977. This contact, like many that will come after it, start becoming more and more involved just with the lives of the group members. Billy's making a really difficult effort here to form this group, get the bylaws together, and get everybody living under one set of guidelines. And you have all these personalities coming together, and things are proving very difficult. Also, we see the Pleiadians getting more and more involved in the personalities and the thought processes of all of the members, starting to offer opinions and so forth about what Billy should do. Ptah is asked about protecting Billy from the these energy forces that are surrounding Mr. G, this violet-colored energy thing that's very powerful. As it turned out, was she didn't have too many suggestions, but had some plans for a device that could be built which would kind of diffuse those energies. And Quetzal built a device like that and installed it in the telemeter device that's floating over Billy's house, and informed him that no longer should he really have to worry about the problems from those energies. If they should attack Billy, the telemeter device then would somehow protect him. As just an aside here, if you happen to read Perry Rodin books, the science fiction paperbacks from Europe, Billy had asked if there was any connection between the author and if he'd had any contacts. And he was kind of surprised to find out, yes, that the man who writes the Perry Rodin science fiction books in Europe was quite often inspired by extraterrestrials, although he himself was not aware of it. Well, not too long after that, a rather unusual thing happened at the house. Billy was walking Claire out one night to leave, and they heard a strange sound by the house, and kind of spooked Claire, and she hopped in her car and took off. Billy, after Claire left, Billy went in the house and got his flashlight, his tape recorder, and actually got his gun. He was getting pretty spooked by all this talk about security and people trying to take his life and so forth, so he was kind of on his toes. Well, he walks out in front of the house, and he's listening very carefully for the noise, and he puts the tape recorder on a fence post, and he's listening. He just stands there and listens, and he hears this sound, Merg, and he doesn't know quite what to make of it, Merg, and suddenly he sees somebody walking slowly towards him, and he can barely see in the dark, and it's the shape of a woman, and he looks closely and sees it has very long fingers. Right away he can tell this is not a normal human being. This deals somehow with some sort of extraterrestrial. Well, as the being gets a little bit closer, Billy not only notices it has long fingers, but has an unusual looking head and face, which kind of look like an aquarium sort of person, like a water woman or some kind, almost like a fish sort of head. Well, Billy's a little cautious and doesn't know what's going on, and so he just reaches down and cocks his gun. And just as he does that, this being just disappears immediately. So he's telling Semjase and Quetzal about this, wanting to know if they have any idea what's going on. So he explains all about what happened and how he pulled his gun, and he may have acted too quickly. And that after he thought about it, and he listened to the tape recording, because on the tape recording was the sound this creature was making, which was Merg, Merg. Billy ascertained, because of his large knowledge of symbol language and sounds, that what this being was saying probably was the word peace, and that he probably overreacted because he was so sensitive about someone threatening his life, that he probably ran off a very peaceful being here, and he was feeling kind of bad about it. Well, it didn't take too long for Ptah to find out, yes, indeed, that was true, that whatever this being was trying to come peacefully, and they suggested in case they returned that Billy be very peaceful, which he said, of course, that he would. It turned out these beings were called Cygnians, Cygnians. They were from a very far away race, and apparently what had happened is their ship, when coming to Earth, their drive system had gone out, and that for 2 years they had floated rather aimlessly in space and made it to Earth. And when they came into Earth, apparently the telemeter devices didn't pick up the ships coming in by some freak accident of radiation of some type. and their ship had landed. They still had some power sources, apparently, because they were able to screen the ship, and the Pleiadians were not able to find them. So apparently one of the Cygnians, they were trying to find someone to contact on the planet to help them out because their drive system was damaged. Ptah explained that on the Cygnian world, that these beings were more animalistic than they were human, and they still live by the herd principle. Like you would have reindeer or buffalo, where they have the leader of the herd is the strongest and so forth. Well, this was still happening on their planet. And because of this, this herd mentality, which had slowly evolved on their world to more of a wisdom system, they were used to looking to the person with the strongest vibrations and strongest mental abilities to be the leader. And this had attracted them to Billy. And this is why they had come to Billy. So Billy started to feel kind of foolish that he had run someone off and scared someone off, someone who had actually come and help. Well, it took them just a little while to find the Cygnians, and Ptah contacted their home planet back home and to see what they could do about repairing their busted engine. Turns out that the ships they were flying were quite old. It had been a present to them almost 4,000 years back, that the Cygnians themselves were very non-mechanical and didn't have a clue on how to fix it. Not to mention the drive systems were unusual also to the Pleiadians, and they weren't sure how to repair it and didn't have any parts for it, so it was going to take some time to do that. Apparently the Cygnian that had come to Billy, her name was Athena. The Pleiadians eventually found the Cygnians in their ship and took them to their station in Switzerland and put them up there for a few months while they got their ship fixed. Well, Billy, feeling pretty poorly about the way he had treated this Cygnian that had come to help, said he'd sure like to meet her and express his, his sorrow at being so abrupt with her. And it was arranged that he could do that. He finally meets Athena and gets to take his picture of Athena, this rather unusual being from another world. Okay, we're up to the 92nd contact now, and this is on Wednesday, November 23rd, 1977. Billy gets on his moped and he's riding out to the spot where he's supposed to meet them, and he's really not feeling very well at all. Out of all this worry and concern about possible attacks by the Fath and other energies that may be bothering the members of the group, he's been trying very hard to protect them. There are 11 other people sleeping in the house, and what Billy's been doing is he's been staying up every night while they sleep, and he's been staying awake spiritually to protect them. He guards their subconscious on the astral plane so outside influences can't get in to bother them. And then, of course, he has to sleep for a few hours and everybody's up again for the day. Well, you combine this with the work of running the center, doing the physical work, having contacts, and doing the writing. He's wearing the center, doing the physical work, having contacts, and doing the writing. He's wearing himself out. So his nerves are becoming very frayed, and when he gets into the ship, Quetzal comments on this, and he and Semjase are telling him, you've got to calm yourself down, and you're going to have to be more careful with yourself, or you're going to damage yourself very seriously and injure the mission. One of the things that they wanted to talk to him about was that there had been certain problems in the group, and it's discovered that Hans has been spreading lies about Billy and is actually being very deceitful and causing lots of problems, and this is a big shock to Billy. Fifth contact, Saturday, December 17th, 1977. Semjase is visiting Billy in the meditation room that they've built at the center, and they're both sitting there in chairs talking, and suddenly Semjase gets a little concerned. She thinks she hears somebody outside, and she says, Billy, somebody's coming, I've got to go. And she says, no, calm yourself, there's nobody out there. She hears it again, and she jumps up out of the chair, and she's backing up, and she trips over a little space heater there in the room and falls backward, hits herself on the wall, and disappears just as soon as she hits the wall. Well, Billy's not too surprised by this because he's used to her hitting the button on her little belt there, and she immediately pops back out and goes up into her ship. He goes outside and finds that Jacobus is out there, and apparently knowing that Semjase was in the meditation room, he had decided to sneak up there and have a peek at her and wanted to get to see her himself. Well, Quetzal shows up 2 days later on Saturday because Semjase had blinked out on Thursday night. It's now Saturday, and Quetzal comes to find out exactly what had happened. And the tone of his voice is very serious, and Billy's immediately kind of alarmed and says, well, what's going on? What's happening? And he starts to explain to Quetzal all about what happened. And Quetzal says that, well, after she beamed out of the room, she didn't show up back at the base, and they were very concerned. Well, they went looking for her and found that Semjase was floating in her ship above the center. She had a broken arm, she was in a coma, and her skull and the back of her head was greatly damaged. And, matter of fact, she was so close to death that Quetzal was very, very alarmed. He immediately informed Ptah and rushed Semjase as quickly as possible back to the planet Ira to see what he could do for her. Ptah is trying to do something because it seems to be beyond their science, so he puts a call out to Ascot, since their race is far more advanced, to see if something that actually they could do. Well, the chain of events goes on that Billy doesn't hear anything for several days, and he's quite concerned. And then on Wednesday, December 21st, after several days, which is his 96th contact, suddenly he's contacted by someone he doesn't know. It's a Pleiadian man called Isetos. And he goes to see Isetos, and Isetos apparently has come to bring him a message about Semjase, and Billy's very upset. And he said, well, who are you? I don't know you, and why have they sent somebody I don't even know? Days have gone by here, I haven't heard from Quetzal, and why haven't they informed me what's going on? He's very nervous about what's happened to Semjase. And Isetos begins to tell him, well, calm yourself, and I'll explain about what's going on, and blah, 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 that Semjase's okay. And Billy just flies off the handle. He says, I know she's not okay. Who do you think you are coming here and giving me this information? I know a lot better than that. I've projected myself back to the planet Ira to see for myself. And Isetos is very taken aback by this. He says, you have projected your consciousness back to Ira? I was not informed that you had these abilities. I thought you to be a very primitive and ignorant person. And Billy gives him a short lecture about, he's just crawled out of the jungle and he's not quite as silly as a monkey. And then he has those abilities, and he proceeds to tell Isetos all that he has seen. He tells him that he projected his consciousness, astral projection, back to the planet Ira to see what has happened to Semjase. He sees her in a glass box in what looks room sort of like a hospital room of some kind, and she's laying there frozen, completely dead in this glass box. That her head is in some sort of horseshoe device that's transparent. And he explains all this to Isetos and says, so how can you become telling me here that everything is okay when I've seen for myself that she's dead? What are you talking about? And Isetos apologizes to Billy for assuming he was so ignorant, and he's very surprised that Billy was able to do that. And he calms him down, and he assures Billy that he has come to give good news, that Semjase is alive and she's well. Billy says, well, how could this be possible? And he says, well, Semjase was frozen in that state that you saw, Billy. You were absolutely correct, but you did see that she apparently was dead. Pleiadian technology allowed them to freeze Semjase in a particular state that prevented the spirit from actually separating from the body. Even though there was medical death and severe brain damage and no brain waves, that they were able to stop it right at that point in hopes that Ascot's technology might be able to do something. Well, what actually happened was, he said, was that Ptah got in touch with Ascot. Ascot said that no, it was too far gone for their technology, but she got in touch with another race of people who had the technology to do something about it. They immediately just transmitted themselves into the operating room on Ira. These men came in, I guess you'd call them doctors, or we'll call them that. They came and they did something very, very unusual. They brought with them kind of an artificial plasma. They then took the dead part of the brain out, took the skull cap off, took the dead part of the brain out that had died out, and they put this artificial plasma back into Semjase's brain and put the skull cap back on. Within a few moments, Semjase was sitting up on the table out of her coma and was seemingly herself again. But 42 hours had gone by that she'd officially been dead, and she, of course, had no reminiscence of any of this and didn't know what really had happened. Well, it was explained to her that these people that had done this were called, they were Sonas, and so they would be called Sonians. And what they had actually done is this artificial plasma somehow that they have brought back served to work as a synthetic kind of brain. This plasma then attaches itself to the brain. It emulates the natural electrical force or life force of the being itself, and will for 3 or 4 years then work as kind of an artificial brain until the natural brain will start to recognize it as a natural part of itself again. So, through whatever complicated means this was, somehow Semjasi's life was actually saved by use of this plasma, and she's back on her feet. And Quetzal reports that she will have to stay at Ira for about 3 months for a period of convalescence, that part of the doctor's orders are that she not work and she not use her brain for any new information. She's supposed to take it easy. So Quetzal returns then on the 97th contact, which was the following Wednesday, December 28th. A week later, Quetzal comes back and is very apologetic to Billy, and he's, of course, reaffirming all the things that he's learned from Aisedo, and apologizes to him for not being a little bit more careful with Billy's emotions. And he also was surprised that Billy had the ability to astral project to Ira and see for himself. Well, it's explained to him that Manera and Plesia will help Quetzal continue with the mission, and because Semjasi won't be able to come back for about 3 or 4 months. And Billy has a couple more questions about how this is possible that this plasma could work. And Quetzal just kind of runs over it again, that yes, that the brain itself has within it the electrical, or what's called the cosmical life force. When a being comes into life, that there is a force of energy in each being that keeps us alive. There is a life force within us. And this cosmical life force can do many things. It provides the impulses for life and nourishment, but there's something that it can't do. Apparently, the brain itself can send information to an immune system to correct most everything, but these impulses are not capable of curing the brain itself somehow. So what this plasma does, it's actually a foreign body inside of the brain, and eventually the body will catch on to the fact that it is a transplant. It'll catch on to it, and it will be destructive to the brain. So this artificial plasma, these Sonian guys have figured out some way to emulate the natural cosmic energy that's inside of Semjasi. And they specially prepare or program this plasma so it will be compatible with the life force inside of Semjasi and not be rejected for about 3 or 4 years while the natural body's functions, the brain itself will slowly take to this plasma and make it a natural part of itself. In other words, it'll regrow that part of its own brain. Pretty amazing, huh? Well, Billy asked if they had this ability, then they could probably just keep creating new brains all the time and live forever. Is that true? And he says, before Quetzal can even answer that, Billy answers it himself. He says, no, I can see why that would be wrong. That wouldn't be possible, because that, of course, would interfere with the natural ability of creation to evolve through sleep periods. That at some point, the spirit is going to have to rest. And Quetzal agrees and says that's true. If you technically keep pushing the body, which you can through longer and longer life duration, at some point the material part of the body will give up, and the guy will become an imbecile, and the spiritual self would just go stagnant, and it would force itself into sleep. You can only push it so far. Billy had a question about the Sonians. Quetzal said he really didn't know too much about them. They were from the Tao universe. Their average lifespan was about 2,360 years. They were 175 centimeters tall. They, unlike us, they had a much larger head, about 50% larger than us, with long skulls. And they were about 4,000 years in advance of the Pleiadians, technically. They had evolved to the point where their mental abilities were so powerful that they no longer used flight machines to move around the universe, that they were actually able to transmit themselves just by force of their own mind from the Tao universe to Ira. So these are some pretty developed guys. At the end of this contact, Billy wants to know if the 30-kilometer limit on his travels is still in force that Ptah had set on him, and Quetzal says, no, it's lifted, but you want to be very careful. There was a question about the home planets of the Pleiades. Billy wanted to know, he says, do you actually live in the Pleiades that we look at? Semjasi had mentioned something about having to make a dimensional shift. And Quetzal said, I'm surprised that you picked up on that. We didn't want to tell you about that until 1979. But he says, yes, the Pleiades that we live in are actually in a parallel dimension to the Pleiades that you look at in the sky. The Pleiades that you see in the sky are not suitable for life for us, so we can't live there. The parallel world that we live in is a solid world just like yours, because Billy was concerned that they may exist in some sort of other etheric state on their own planet. But he says, no, we are we are material beings just like you, living in flesh and blood, and the parallel dimension that we live in is also solid just like yours. Quetzal also commented to Billy that there are other forms of life in other dimensions. For instance, on planets where there is flora and fauna, that there are also elemental beings. These are beings who exist in a higher vibrational level than we do. They make no effort to contact us. Their role within nature is that they are connected somehow to the flora and the fauna of a planet. There is no way to acoustically talk to them or telepathically reach them, but it is possible some people do perceive them, but we can't really communicate with them. The 99th contact comes up on Wednesday, January 4th in 78, so we're almost in 3 years here now. And this is a rather sad one because Quetzal has some bad news that he and the others have decided that they've been very disturbed by all the problems in Billy's group, and they're deliberating very seriously about stopping the contacts. It just doesn't seem to serve their interest any longer, and they're very disappointed that the group members are unable to really act responsibly with all the information and help Billy. So they say they've come to the conclusion that the people of Earth are just having too much trouble understanding the truth. And so maybe it's a good time to actually stop the contacts. Quetzal says maybe it's possible they should only continue having contacts for those who believe in or who are very sincere. But then he comments to Billy, if they stop the contacts, it would be a very bad thing for the planet Earth, because if the contacts stopped and the mission stops of developing spiritual guidance leaders with the members of the group, then he fears the prophecies of the future would probably come true, which could mean a very dark time for the planet Earth. And this would really be a shame, because if the members of the group would just understand how important this was, and if they could just open their minds up to the truth, then all this could really be avoided. Well, Billy pleads for those who have been sincere. He understands that many people have difficulty, and for some people, it's very difficult for them to understand all this information and learn it as quickly, perhaps, as the Pleiadians are expecting. And he starts to get a little frustrated and upset, and he's coming on to Quetzal about, you guys are very pushy. You have a lot of nerve coming down here demanding this and demanding that and pushing us so hard. We're doing the best that we can. And the people are working very hard. They're making a very good effort. And it was your forefathers to begin with that caused all of these problems, and you should make a little bit more effort to try to, help us with our difficulties. You need to develop patience, and possibly you just don't understand humanity as well as you really think you do. And he gets rather upset, and he says he's had enough, and he just wants to go home. He doesn't want to talk to Quetzal anymore. He just wants to go. And he makes a very valid effort. Actually, in the contact notes, there's quite a speech he gives on the defense on behalf of humanity and how we really do have to learn our own, and don't be so impatient with us. Well, Quetzal understands a little bit. But Billy doesn't want to talk anymore. He says, let me out of here. I will feel better when I don't have to see you anymore. And immediately goes to the hatch and just leaves the ship. Well, their next contact, which is the 100th contact, Friday, January 6th, Quetzal apologizes. He was very moved by the things that Billy said about Earth humanity, and he apologizes. He doesn't actually apologize. He just says, we realize that we don't understand as much about you as we thought we did. For us, it is a continual learning process also. Please remember, we're not superhuman. We also make mistakes, and they kind of, make up a little bit, and he decides that the contacts will go on. But the Quetzal is still very upset by the action of the group, as well as Ptah and the others are, because there are so many difficulties, egos, and jealousies springing up in the group that really there is no progress as far as the mission is going on, and it's turning out to be just more and more difficult for Billy to hold things together all the time, as well as it's taking a very terrible toll on his health.
tăng.
Well, Billy returns home and tells all the members of the group, that they're going to have to straighten up, and he's explaining to him all about the difficulties, but it doesn't seem to be working. The intrigues and the backstabbing are getting pretty bad around the house. Just a week or so earlier, it's worth noting, on New Year's Eve, there was a little celebration at the center there, and many of the people were there, about 20 of them, and they were all kind of, having a drink of wine and having a good time and having an interesting evening. Billy doesn't drink wine. But Billy was being pressed to show some of his spiritual abilities to the group. And it was kind of done in good faith. Good fun. They'd heard stories about Billy being able to do things with his mind, and they wanted to see something. Because reportedly, when they were moving into the home, on one particular occasion, Billy was able, with his own spiritual abilities, to actually lift a very heavy oven that was too heavy for 4 men to pick up. He moved it onto the truck with the force of his own mind. Well, they'd heard about this, but none of them had really seen anything. So they were kind of pushing Billy to do something. So what ensued was, and Billy seemed to be a little embarrassed by it, and perhaps maybe his feelings were a little bit hurt somehow. He has some strange attitudes sometimes. But at any rate, he was pushed into it, and he started accepting coins from people and performing, I guess you call, like parlor tricks. And he caused a couple of coins to get red hot. He burnt one in his hand. He was able to take a spoon and not only bend it, but have a spoon almost melt and fly across the table. So he kind of got everybody's attention, and everyone got to see Billy's powerful spiritual abilities that night. And so for them it was also true, and this served as kind of a strong thing for most of them of what Billy was talking about, how you can really develop personal abilities through the use of the Spirit. So they had a pretty good show on New Year's Eve. Well, I see we're about out of tape, and we're towards the end of Book 18 now. So I'll see you on the other side, and we'll take a trip to San Francisco in the future. Okay, we're back, and we're on the last side of the contact notes. I've probably told you that the contact notes are actually 18 books. Each book is 100 pages long. And I've gone through chronologically just about everything in them. I've left out a few things, mainly most of the information about creation and science of the universe. And I've left out most all the information about religion, philosophy, God, Jesus Christ, because I want to do those on separate tapes where I can talk about them all at one time. You see, there was information on these subjects every now and then, but it was all broken up where it's difficult to put all the pieces together. So you have separate tapes in your collection called Emmanuel and Creation, which puts all of the information about these ideas into one section so you can hear it all the way through. Okay, we're up to the 102nd contact, which is on Tuesday, February 21st, 1978. We're into our third year of contacts now. It was in the middle of the night that they came this time. Quetzal and Meier came, and they landed their ship right in front of the house. Actually, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. The whole household was asleep, and Billy was surprised that they landed right out in front of the house. And they were in Meier's old ship, which when it sits down on the ground burns a hole in the ground. And they were, of course, able to come out and take pictures of that in the morning. So Billy comes out in front of the house, and they explained they weren't too concerned about anybody seeing him at this hour, and everybody in the house was asleep. I don't know if anybody woke up and took a look, but they should have. They're always wanting to see things, and here they would have got to see them right in the front yard. Quetzal was kind of urgent to come and see Billy, and because he wanted to talk a little bit about the Bephath, that he was quite sure that the Bephath were going to attempt something else towards his life, and they wanted to do something, and they were waiting for the Bephath to do something. And Billy says, yeah, I had a strange event happen just the other day, and there was some noise, and I heard gunfire off in the distance, and suddenly the whole house was kind of shaking and rumbling, and there was all this noise, and I didn't know what was going on. And Quetzal cuts in and says, we know exactly what was going on. Let me tell you what happened. They'd been watching out for the Bephath to do something. The Bephath did. They They heard the gunshots, the cannons that were being fired off in the distance for some sort of celebration, and a triangle, a delta-shaped ship, which is the sign of the Bephath. They come in these delta-shaped ships. They moved one in over Billy's house and were going to try to fire at the house and actually destruct the entire house and kill everyone. And Meier and Quetzal quickly acted and moved their ship right above the house and screened it so the Bephath couldn't see them. When the Bephath fired, it actually hit Quetzal's ship. And the sound that Billy heard was the sound, I guess kind of the reflection of the explosion, whatever, when this energy beam hit Quetzal's ship, and to save Billy's house. So he was explaining all this all about him, and commented also that in the future they had now decided that they were going to take action against the Bephath, and there was going to be, as soon as Ptah had okayed it, there was going to be action taken actually to take the Bephath off the planet. The little ship that had fired at him that night, they had gone after, seized it, and Meier had destroyed the ship so the Bephath would no longer have the use of that. You get the idea as you're reading the notes. There's a difference in personality for sure between Semjase and Quetzal. Semjase seems to be a little more emotional. She gets a little more excited here and there. She's a little sharper with her tongue and her tone about things. Where Quetzal seems to be much more mild-mannered. He seems to be a little bit more understandable, I would say a little more considerate of the situation. He's more tolerable to things, and I like reading the passageways in the books when Quetzal's involved. He just seems to have a really nice personality where he's really trying very hard. And he's obviously a very peaceful and loving man. Okay, we're up to the 104th contact, Saturday, March 18th. And Billy's talking to Quetzal, and he says, the ship that we're in, does it have time travel capabilities? And Quetzal says, yes, it does. What exactly are you up to? And Billy says, well, I want to go into the future. And not just the future. I want to go to a specific place in the future. I want to go to San Francisco and see the next great earthquake. Is there any reason why I couldn't? And Quetzal says, no, not that I can think of. I see no problem with that. But he says the ship that he was using, he'd have to return to the base and make some sort of adjustments or something, because it apparently only had the ability to go into the future for about 30 minutes at a time. And there was no explanation why this was, or why the particular ship that they were using only had that capabilities. But he did. He returned to the base and made some sort of adjustments with the ship. Then he and Billy struck out for the future. Okay, we move into the future, and it doesn't say exactly where they are and what date they are at. But the contact notes begin with they are about 300 kilometers from San Francisco, in the future someplace. And Billy is looking out the hatch of the ship, and he sees the San Andreas Fault. Quetzal's pointed it out to him. And he says, you can see the ridge, the natural ridge all along here where the fault goes. And Billy says, it's very interesting. Can I take a picture of it? And he says, surely you can. And Billy remarks, well, I always have difficulty taking pictures inside the ship. They always seem to be a little bit blurry. And he says, can I take a picture through the hatch, the bottom hatch of the ship where I'm looking at? He says, you can, but it's not going to come out very good because the ship, the propulsion system is letting off some sort of radiation or whatever below the ship, and the pictures are going to be a little bit blurry. So he suggests to Billy that he take the pictures inside the ship on one of the sight screens, which he does. And he gets a picture of the San Andreas Fault. So then he says, well, okay, on to San Francisco, and let's see that. It just takes a minute or two, and they're over in San Francisco, and they're just south of San Francisco, kind of looking northwest. And Billy remarks that he is surprised at the extent of the destruction. It's far greater than he really thought it was going to be. And actually, he's kind of taken back, and they both get a little emotional at the mass destruction that there is. Apparently, it's one of the, a very bad earthquake. Billy says, well, is there some landmark or American building, he calls it here, that I could take a picture of that everybody would recognize right away, so surely they would know that I took a picture of the future. And he comments in there as he's taking it, he says he wants to take a picture of this turn of the century earthquake. There's no exact date given, but there is the phrase that it's happening right at the turn of the century. Now we're 92 now. Then also it's mentioned that even though they moved forward in the future from 1978, that each time they would have gone back, the time would slightly be different. So, and as I've learned from Billy since, that things are speeding up a little bit. So we don't know exactly when that earthquake may hit. It is certainly before the turn of the century, because if anything, it's faster than the time period that Billy saw. And he remarked at the time he was told it was at the turn of the century, right at the turn of the century. So possibly it's going to be a few years before that. So, heck, I don't know. Okay, we're up to the 106th contact, which is on Monday, April 10th, 1978. And Quetzal has some really very hard news for Billy, that he and the others have been monitoring the thoughts and feelings of all the members very carefully to see what they're doing, and things are really not going very well at all. As a matter of fact, he remarks in here, and he gives the names of several group members who are on their own, secretly talking and discussing, and are thinking very negative thoughts about the whole center idea. They're even going so far as to try to undermine Billy, and they're talking to other people, telling them, don't invest in this, don't put any money into the house, and it's getting very bad. There's even a couple of people who are developing great hate for Billy's wife. There's lots of jealousies going on. And so Quetzal says, this really is not working out the way we expected, so we're going to have to kind of put the group on some sort of probation here, where we can monitor their thoughts for a while and see if this really changes. And this time Billy's pretty much in agreement. Things have not gotten better. The group steadily is getting worse, even no matter what. Things have not gotten better. The group steadily is getting worse, even no matter what he can do about it. That the teachings aren't going well. Certain members are just, violently opposed to them, and they're going to have to leave the group, which they wind up doing. So it's kind of a sad time. It's kind of the beginning of the end, when both Quetzal and Billy actually are beginning to realize that this just is not working out. That Billy's mission as a prophet may have to be served in other ways. Well, on the 107th contact, that's Saturday, May 20th, 78, we're up to 107 of them now, Billy's surprised was Semyasi and Plea come to see Billy. And Semyasi is back, and he's, of course, very excited about this. He hasn't seen her. She's been gone for 3 months since the accident. So he's really happy to see them. And, there's the usual exchange of, how are you, great to see you, etc., etc. And one of the first things Semyasi says, which is very nice, is she says, tell Jacobus that I don't hold anything against him. It's not his fault. And Billy's very happy about this, because Jacobus, there's been a lot of anger vented toward Jacobus for the accident, because they all feel like he caused the accident, and it wouldn't have happened with, if he hadn't been sneaking around and being irresponsible. And Jacobus himself, I know him, he's really kind of a sweet guy, but he's a little slow, and I don't mean that unkindly, and he has a difficult time with things. And he felt very bad. He felt very bad when this happened. So it was very nice for her to say that and kind of perk up his feelings a little bit. Billy's feeling a little better now, and he's kind of excited that Semyasi's back. And he says, can we just fly over by the house? And she says, sure. And they fly over by the house, and his wife and several members of the group, he sees them down in front of the house, and he hops on the radio so they can hear him. And he's saying hello to everybody down below. And he says, Semyasi, could you please just let the ship be seen from it so everybody could see you? And she says, oh no, it's not possible to do. I don't have Quetzal's permission. So unfortunately that wasn't possible at the time. Along with this contact came the news that the Befath, the last remains of them, had been rounded up and taken off of the planet. They were going to take them to another galaxy in another location where their technologies would be taken away from them, where they really couldn't cause any more trouble. It was also mentioned that they were going to fill in some of the area below the pyramids, way down below in the big halls where the Befath had been living, and they just took everything out and filled it all in down there with some sort of dematerialization, rematerialization process. So Billy said, well, did you fill in all of the walkways and caverns below the pyramid? And she said, no, most of them are still there. We just filled in the very large ones where the Befath were living. Sadly enough, though, she had to reiterate the words of Quetzal, that yes, they and the others had really noticed the degeneration of the group, and the great problems and strain that it was putting on Billy. And she said that the High Council had informed Quetzal that they better start putting a probation period on this, and if things didn't get any better, then they were just going to have to stop the contacts as they were happening. And Billy kind of agreed, and they suggested also that he no longer even pass out his contact notes to the members, because most of them were not behaving sincerely anyway, and it probably wasn't a good idea. And he agreed to that also. At this point, he's understanding more their viewpoint, where their desires and their interests are not being met or serviced by the group, and so there's no point in really continuing it. Well, the 108th contact is on Thursday, June 1st, 1978. And Ptah and Quetzal come because they want to talk to Billy to just make sure he understands clearly about what's going on with the group. And they're explaining to Billy, they realize all the pressures that are being put on Billy, but Billy, as it's turning out, has been doing so much manual work and spending so much time with the group that he's not having any time to spend on his mission. It's actually been a while since a contact. He hasn't written anything. He hasn't been doing any teaching, and he's getting tireder all the time. And it's turning out that his methods of leadership are not working out, so they just wanted to let him know that they were aware of things were not going well. But it was a very friendly meeting, and they were not really having problems with him personally. They were just noticing how difficult things were going. Billy at this time is given the actual names of the members of the group who are causing all of the problems that should leave the group and not be allowed to return. And there are several names in there, which there's no point in mentioning them now. And one comment was that these people also, something that isn't mentioned in the contact notes up till here, but in the meditation chamber, all the members of the Figu group have been allowed to use the meditation chamber, where Quetzal had affixed some device on the top of the pyramid in the meditation chamber that is increasing the lifespan of the people using it by about 10 to 12%. And it's commented here that once these people leave the group, within a very short period of time, the influences caused by that pyramid will go away, and their normal lifespan will then be set back in, so that their original time of death would once again come into play. It's mentioned here also that Claire, unfortunately, which is up to now has been one of Billy's closest friends in the group, unfortunately is having so much difficulty, there's so much strain on her too, that she's taking to undermining the mission and wants out and is causing a lot of damage. She's speaking behind Billy's back, and this is a great pain also to Billy. He's also given a list of each person at the center of what they should start doing. The Pleiadians are trying to help Billy establish a little order, and they give him this list of work things that they think each person at the center should do, so Billy wouldn't have to do so much himself, okay? And Billy's given a set of regulations again for the group. Even though they'd drawn up a set of Figu regulations themselves when they founded the group, doesn't seem to be working out very well. No one's sticking to them. At least, some of them aren't. Many of the people, Guido and Bernadette and Jacobus and Engelbert and his wife Maria have always been very faithful from the beginning, and I don't mean to mix them up with these particular problems, including Billy's wife Poppy, who's just my favorite. I just love her. She's so sweet, and she's endured so much difficulties throughout all of these contacts, being a mother and having the difficulty of families, that I can't give enough praise really to her for her personal strength in enduring all this. These people are still with Billy. They endured the entire thing, and they're still hanging in there, so good for them. On the 111th contact, Monday, July 17, 78, Billy is on his way out to the contact. Once before he had difficulties where his nerves were going bad. He was just getting exhausted. Well, this particular time, on the way out to the contact, he just simply fell over in a ditch. He's riding his moped, he has a nervous breakdown, and he just collapses from exhaustion, literally. Quetzal pulls him up into the ship immediately. Billy's in a coma, he's so far gone, and they're very fearful for his life. It takes a few minutes, even with Quetzal's sophisticated technology, to bring Billy around, and it takes some minutes then for him actually to repair some of the nerve damage in Billy's body. Apparently Billy has damaged some of the internal organs. His heart's even beating irregularly, and there was a very close call here. He may have actually even passed away. Billy notices after he comes to that Quetzal and Semjase are over the top of him, and he's a little surprised to actually even find himself in the ship. And they're explaining to him what the damage that he's done to his nervous system, and Billy's kind of giving in. He sees it happening too. He's just exhausted, and he has no mental awareness hardly at all. Quetzal tells him it's going to take about 12 to 14 days for his nerves to regenerate after the treatment that he had just given him. And Billy can't hardly talk straight, and he's kind of dopey. Apparently Quetzal's done something to him to cause him to just like calm down, some sort of induced tranquilizer. He does mention that the device that he used on him to repair the nervous system and bring him back to health was electromagnetic in nature. He doesn't explain exactly how it works, but just the type of process that was used. Billy's then set down close to home where Jacobus picks him up, and Billy has to go home and do a little recuperating for a couple of weeks because he's just in very bad shape. On a later contact, actually on Wednesday, July 19th, it's just a couple of days later, it's the 112th contact. It was a very short one to check in and see how Billy was feeling. About the only thing they talked about, oddly enough, was dancing. Billy wanted to know if they had dancing in the Pleiades. And Quetzal says they had dancing in the Pleiades. And Quetzal says, yes, they do, but as far as he knows, that dancing is like a normal thing that seems to be in just about every race they come across. It has to do with the rhythm and being interested in the rhythm and moving to it and so forth, which that seems pretty normal. But he did comment something kind of unusual. He says that on a Pleiadian world, that the men don't dance. The women will dance, but the men don't dance. And here's why. This is kind of unusual. Might give you some insights into something here. He says that in certain cases, that many males are very incomplete in their feeling of being male, and they harbor some feminine tendencies within them, and that dancing brings those out. And if a person, by virtue of having a short rebirth, they call it, if a person comes back into life too fast, faster than they're supposed to, for whatever reason, that there's a tendency for this, where the spirit may be slightly confused about its sex. Apparently what it comes out to is that we have the ability to determine our sex from lifetime to lifetime, and that's something that we need to have programmed in ourselves when we pass away, when we die. That's something that's in our own head. But if it's not, if we die early out of accident, and we're not clear on whether or not we want to be male or female, when you have an accident, you return to birth much faster than you normally do. And in that instance, he says that the inside the spirit may not be exactly sure if it wants to be male or female. There may be some slight confusion in there, and if there is, dancing will bring that out and make the person even more confused. Now, it sounds like what they're talking about here is there could be some sort of explanation in all of this, how homosexuality actually manifests itself. It can be some sort of accident of when a person does not lead a fulfilled life, a long life, perhaps dies short, comes back too fast, and is confused themselves. Maybe that's where it comes from. Okay, we're up to the 113th contact now, and that happened on Sunday, August 6th, 1978. This contact was, again, for Billy's information. There was very little talk at all about the group. It was with Quetzal and Semjase together. Semjase is still attending most of the contacts here. One of the things they talked about, Billy had a question about the Catholic Church. He had been doing some work with his numbers and working on the prophecies of the future and so forth, and wanted to discuss with him if he was correct about the coming times of the future in relationship to the popes. And Quetzal says, yes, I'll run over that for you. He says, shortly there will be a new pope, that the pope that's in office right now will pass away, and it will be time to elect a new one. Now, we're in 1978 here. I'll try to keep the dates straight here so you can follow this. He says this new pope will be elected by 111 cardinals on Saturday, August 26th. His name is Luciani. He will be called Pope Johannes Paul I, Pope John Paul I. Okay? Now, his name will be introduced to these cardinals when they go to vote. If, in case you're not familiar, there is what's called the chairs of Rome. The Vatican is actually run by the chairs of Rome, or the cardinals. And I don't know exactly how many there are. There's well over 100. And they make the decision. They vote in on who's going to be pope. Okay? So what has happened here is they're voting in this new guy, Pope John Paul I. His name is Luciani, his real name. And they take, from the moment of time that it's introduced that this man may become pope, it only takes 33 minutes for them to deliberate and to decide that he should be the next pope, which apparently is rather quick for them. Well, oddly enough, even though it only took 33 minutes for him to be decided upon, he's going to be dead in 33 days, on September 28th. Here's why. Apparently, after they decide to put him in power, make him the pope, that they're very surprised by the way this man acts, and it causes a lot of horror, was the word that's used in there, with his behavior. First thing he did is he broke tradition by not wanting a fancy coronation when he became pope. All he wanted was a simple ceremony, and this really angered the cardinals. And for the weeks that followed, just a couple of weeks after that, he seemed to be offending a lot of the cardinals and causing lots of problems. And apparently the cardinals feel that they are the real power of the Catholic Church, and the Pope is just a figurehead. So already a plot was put into motion to actually kill this poor Pope, or it's going to be put in motion because we're talking in the future here, to kill this poor guy. So Pope John Paul I is already in trouble. They poison him on September 28th at 2307 hours. That's 11 o'clock in the evening, 11:07 in the evening. He's going to be poisoned with a very fast-acting poison that disappears quickly in the body, and it will appear as though he had a heart attack. Now, I remember back in '78 when that happened. The guy was only in office for about a month, and I thought, gee, that's too bad. The poor fellow died of a heart attack just after getting, this job. That, as a religious man, I'm sure it must be the height of your career to become the Pope. So I remember feeling kind of sad for the fellow that he'd probably worked all of his life as a priest and whatever, working his way up, becoming a cardinal, whatever, and then suddenly he becomes Pope, and a month after he becomes Pope, he's dead. But according to the Pleiadians, it was no accident. The cardinals actually poisoned him because they didn't want him any longer as the Pope. Well, one of the other problems was, too, this new Pope will also be too kind to the people. And they apparently don't like that. They like for the popes really to just kind of deal out the rules and laws of Catholicism and work very closely and kind with the cardinals themselves. Kind of sounds like Congress and the president, doesn't it? Well, apparently this pope, that was another reason why they poisoned him, that they were afraid that he was going to become too friendly with the public, too lenient, and they would lose some of their control and some of their power. Billy questioned, well, whether or not they would actually get caught at this, because apparently they've done it several times in the past where the cardinals have actually poisoned or in other means gotten rid of popes. And Quetzal remarked, no, it's very hard to catch them. You must remember that the Vatican is a separate state in Italy, has its own police force, its own little government, its own post office, and the Italian government or no other government really has authority to investigate or do anything. So they're really it's very difficult at all to pursue any kind of investigation and catch them, so they can really kind of get away with it. And Billy thought this was kind of sad that this sort of thing was really happening. Billy's not much for religion, but at the same time he doesn't go along with murder at all. Now this Pope that's getting Pope John I, who's going to be poisoned, his successor begins the prophecies that Billy's talking about, because there's only going to be 3 more popes now, and he's the 3rd one. There'll be 2 more after him. His name is Pope John Paul II. And he'll be appointed Pope within a month after the death of Pope John Paul I, who dies of poison on September 28th. In October, Pope John Paul II comes into power. His real name is Karol, and I can't pronounce it. It's Wojtyla, Polish name, Wojtyla. Not very good with names. I don't know how to pronounce that. but he will be the third. There are only three popes but left before the big world change is going to come. He's the 264th pope, and he will die in the near future. They know the date, but they don't want to give that date just at that point. The world will then be astonished when that pope that comes along next will also be killed very shortly. Then that would be the second to the last pope. He won't have a very long reign whatsoever. Then the last pope will come into power, and he will be a pope with the number value of 5. And he will bring Catholicism into the world arena of war and so forth, and reveal the Catholicism for what it really is. He will be the 266th and last pope. That the prophecy says, and they say that Billy is correct, that will be the end of the Christian church, or at least the Catholic Church, that the war will have broken out, and Italy will be overrun, and Catholicism is going to be stamped out, was kind of the phrase they used. That'll be the end of it. Billy out was kind of the phrase they used. That'll be the end of it. Billy must be very careful not to reveal any of these events, because of course they haven't happened yet, and he should never do anything that influences the future. He must be very careful about that. So he assures them that he will not. So we'll have to see how its hand plays out. Actually, at the time of this tape in '92, I don't know which pope we're on. If we're on the 265th or 266th, so you might want to check it out. If we're on the 266th pope, that's the last one. Well, the last contact, the contact notes, which is the 115th contact, took place on Thursday, October 19th, 1978. So it's been almost 3 years. And there hasn't been too many contacts of any consequence really in the last year, because most all of them have been centered around helping Billy get the group, the FIGU, organized. FIGU is F-I-G-U, and I should have mentioned it earlier here, sorry. It's an acronym for Free Community of Interest in the Border, Spiritual Sciences, and UFOlogy. Now in German, if you've ever read any German or looked into it all, they make these gigantic words. And when they would say free community of interest in the border and spiritual sciences and UFOlogy, we say that with, a number of small words. They put it all together into one word. And there is one word for that, but it's like 26 characters long, and I can't begin to pronounce it. No one else can either, unless you're German. So we just call it the FIGU, F-I-G-U, and that's just a short acronym for meaning that. So I should have probably explained that earlier, but the difficulties now of getting the FIGU organized and together have become very difficult. The Pleiadians have tried for some weeks to get Billy to come to a contact. He has not answered. He hasn't shown up. And they're, of course, very concerned, because they have a huge amount of time and things invested in him, and they know he's okay. They can tell he's at home and that he's working and doing things, but he's not responding to his telepathic calls, and he hasn't been making any effort to contact them. And now here they are at the 115th contact. Billy showed up. It's October 19th, 1978, the last contact. Well, Billy comes, and Semyasi right away says, she's quizzing him, well, why haven't you responded, and so forth, and is something wrong, and we're very worried about you and very concerned. And Ptah and Quetzal are also there, and Ptah breaks in. He says, I understand, I know what's wrong, and it's come to a point where Billy has decided not to continue with the contacts. And Billy and everybody kind of looks at him, and Ptah always seems to know everything that's going on. And Ptah goes on to say, and he understands why, that for years Billy's been trying to teach the members of his group all of the lessons of spirit and the lessons of all of the knowledge and things that he's learned. And the more he tries, he continues to be more and more frustrated, because very few of them are catching on, understanding, or making any attempt to learn. And the original idea of the FIGU was to bring a group of people together around Billy who would study and learn the lessons and help Billy disseminate them to the world. That it was assumed this would be the best way to get the information out to the world. But it has not worked out. Not only is it not getting out to the world, it's not even working out within the group itself, where there's been so much dissension, fighting, and jealousy that they haven't even learned the lessons themselves. So at this point, Billy's gotten to the point where he just can't stand it any longer. Always the ego and the materialism and jealousy are getting in the way whenever he tries to teach people about love and understanding and how to get along. The biggest problem has really been that the people in the group let their own egos get in the way, and they're all worried about whether or not they're more important than somebody else, if they're closer to Billy, or if they're in favor of Billy or whatever. There's a lot of that going on. That was even going on when I was going over there all the time. So Billy actually is just giving up, and he said he's just had enough, that it's just impossible for him to act as the leader of the Figu, control entirely the group, work around the house, and then try to continue his mission. And he remarks to them, and Ptah understands that it's come to a point where it's just no longer working out well. And Billy wishes to discontinue the contacts in their way also. The probation has not worked out. So this becomes the last contact in the contact notes, which is book 18. I myself was going over seeing Billy and was a member of the Figu. I believe it was 87, 88, and 89. And during the time period I was there, I discovered that there are quite a few more contacts. We're on the 115th contact, and at the time I was over there, there was already 190. There had been another 75, 80 contacts or so, but they were not for the public, and they were not for the group. And they were primarily all telepathic contacts just for Billy. The contacts did continue on. As a matter of fact, Billy actually did write 2 more books of contact notes, book 19 and book 20. And they've never been circulated. I think the only copies of them are in Billy's office. I've read both of them, 19 and 20, and they're really kind of sad commentaries, because here's a man who's had the opportunity to have meetings, contacts, and education with human beings from another world, and it's become so, it failed because of just the human element. It didn't do well, and in it is full of sadness. There were a few contacts right after book 18, but they were only to talk about the failing of the problems and how Billy just did not turn out to be the right kind of person to lead all of these people. He just couldn't do all of these things. And in book 19 it discusses that a little bit, as well as some of the arguments and so forth that went on in the group. And because of that, the book just never came out, nor did book 20. And book 19 also has a few prophecies in it that were only, I think they were for the year 79 or 80, I forget the exact dates. And they talked about all the problems at the Munich Olympics, the terrorism and so forth. That was told to Billy how that was going to come about and what was going to happen. Billy did send circulars, flyers, and letters to the people at the Olympics warning them, but no one seemed to pay any attention. Okay, we've just finished going over 18 books of contact notes, or semyasa reports, whichever way you want to refer to them. And those are the private notes of Billy Meier that were written, of course, through all of his many contacts. Aside from that, he wrote several other books and is continuing to write. I thought it might be interesting here, since we have a little room on this tape, you might like to know about many of the other books and what they're actually about and how you could go about getting them. All the books are written in German. Billy does live in Switzerland, and he lives in the part of Switzerland where they speak German. So they're all written in German. If you read and write German, you could, of course, write and receive any of these books and read them yourself. Unfortunately, most of us here in America don't read German. So I have all of the books in German. Most of them have been translated into English by various people. But unfortunately, the way has never come clear for them to get published. There's always been difficulties with contracts or legal problems, and the books have really never come out. So I thought it'd be good right here. I've got a little list of all the books that are available. I'll tell you what Billy has written, what they're about, and at the end I'll give you his address, and you can write and get them if you want. The first book is just called An Opening Word, and it's available in German only. It's $20 when you send for it. And it's just an opening thing about Billy himself. It's the truth about the information, the purpose, the meaning of religions, the revelation of their influence on human life. So it's just a few opening words about Billy, and it's called An Opening Word. The next book is called Arahat Athrasata, and this is a very unusual book. During his contacts, as they were going on for the 3-year period, Billy was also receiving telepathic transmissions from a higher spiritual form that the Pleiadians put him in touch with. This is not channeling. He actually receives telepathic symbols, and then the symbols have to be converted by virtue of the sign or key language, whatever you want to call it, and then he writes them out. So Arahat Athrasata is a higher spiritual form, as you will hear about on the 2 tapes entitled Emmanuel, that Arahat Athrasata was the same spiritual form that was the teacher to Emmanuel, the man known as Jesus Christ. So this is a higher spiritual form that no longer exists in the physical form, which Billy had a great deal of difficulty receiving information from. The transmissions were stopped on several occasions, once because they were coming too fast, he was overworked, once because the transmissions were too difficult for him to perceive, the frequency was too high, so they adjusted that. But it finally did get done, and the book has been translated actually into English, but there's no legal precedent here, or contract, I might say, for the thing to actually be published. So that may happen in the future sometime. But anyway, I thought I would read you the short foreword from Arahat Athrasata, and then you would get an idea roughly what's in the book. It says in the foreword, Arahat Athrasata, mankind of this earth is in a stage of witnessing a step towards a radical change, a new age, that is clearly seen by spiritual people as more significant. Nevertheless, the great mass of humanity is in the abyss of spiritual ignorance and bondage. So it has become necessary to go to the root and give them this message. It is also necessary to lead them towards or forward to a new way on the path of spiritual understanding and harmony in the future. The earthman should open his spiritual senses and recognize the truth. So begins the message from the spirit level of Arahat Athrasata. There are valuable references to be found in this book on the development of the awareness of life, so that as man begins the Aquarian age, he finds the path of creative justice. That's the foreword in the book. It's roughly a 100-page book. I've read the thing several times. It's a great little book, and it actually contains some really valuable information in the later chapters on practical information on how to experience spiritual growth, how the thoughts of your mind actually work in the universe, how they are, you might say, reflected by the universe, so you can learn to understand what is happening with your thoughts. It's called a boomerang effect, where your thoughts have electrical charges. You create a thought, send it out, and it comes back to you in kind of a reverse polarity form. It's called a boomerang. That's explained in the book. It's a very valuable book with insights into humanity and how we could prepare ourselves for the coming age. In German, you can buy it. It's $25 if you send for that over there. And hopefully maybe someday we'll be able to get the opportunity to actually publish it and sell it here in English so you could read it. Much of the information that's in it, I kind of squeeze into the tapes here and there a little bit. Okay, the next book is called Biotope. I had no idea what a biotope was when I was villing over at Billy's, and I saw this and I said, "What's a biotope?" And they said, "You don't know what a biotope is?" And I said, "No." And she says, "Well, it's a garden patio." I said, "I never heard of that." And she says, "Well, you must, surely. It's the most common word in English." Well, maybe it is to a lot of you, but I was not familiar with the word biotope. I am familiar with patio, but not biotope. So Biotope is a short book. It's on the design, layout, and plans on how to build garden patios within nature. That's just $5. There's also a book called The Book of Names. This is a very interesting book. It includes over 6,000 names in their original form and meaning. Throughout the notes, when we were going through the tapes, you notice I mentioned a couple of times that the ancient Lyrians had pretty much figured out entirely the language of spirit. In other words, the sounds that are made and how the spirit actually interprets those sounds in actual meaning. Well, there's a book of names. And this book of names, you can go through it and you find all of the sounds and so forth, and you can look up the name like Sharon, and you can look it up and see what that name actually means in the old Lyrian language, which is founded, as I said, as best they could on the true meaning of how spirit interprets these sounds. That's $60 for the book of names. There's a book called Directives. and it's in German only. By the way, I don't. It says $60 on the list, but I tend to think that's a misprint because it's not that big of a book, and I do not believe that the Book of Names is actually $60. So I think it's a misprint on the list. It's probably only about $15 or $20. There's a book called Directives. It's in German only, and it says $18. These are guidelines, rules of behavior, achieving and keeping one's psychology, physical and conscious, purity, health. This is an attempt by them to write down all the directives for life and how to make kind of maintenance for the psyche, the mind, and consciousness, and so forth. There's another little book called the Decalogue. The Decalogue was translated years ago by a lady here in the United States named Roberta Brooks, who was a very close associate of Billy Meier's, and she was able to translate a book called the Decalogue, the Psyche, and the Meditation. And unfortunately, she had some difficulties with the group over there, not with Billy himself, and there was a falling out, and these books came off of the market, unfortunately. But they're very good books, and she did an excellent job of getting them translated. It's just unfortunate they're no longer on the market. Well, the Decalogue is a book that's devoted to the understanding and explanation of the 10 Commandments, or what's called the 10 Bids. This book was actually transmitted to Billy by another spiritual level called the Patali level. The Patali level is the very highest of spiritual levels. Both it and the Arhat Ather level were very difficult for Billy to perceive. The Patali level was way too high. So it was arranged through the High Council of the Pleiadian worlds that the Patali transmissions would be received by them in meditation. The frequencies then were toned down to where a human could receive them, and Billy was transmitted this information from the Patali level, which explained the original 10 bids or commandments as they originally were in the universe. And there's some explanations in there on how they mildly vary, depending on how the way we've defined them over the past few years. And actually, there's 2 more commandments in there. There's really 12. And so if we find our way to be able to get this book out to you in English sometime, you'll be able to read all of those. You can send for it in German, by the way, and it's just $15 over there. There's also an index of the photos. As many of you know, Billy took hundreds of photos. There's an index to all of the photos for $15. It does not have pictures in it. It has descriptions of each picture, who took it, when and where, and you can buy that, and from that then you can order the photos. There's a book called Life and Death, and it's written by Billy again. It's $25, and it's about the continuation of the spirit inhabiting the human being after the death of the physical body. It's a very interesting book. You might want to get that one. There's one called The Law of Love. It deals with the love and the basis of our existence, the logic of love, its definition and meaning in human life. It's also $15. There is a book called The Meditation, and the meditation is actually like an introduction to the principles of what meditation is. It's an explanation mentally of how to go about performing meditation. You might say exercising it and learning about oneself and developing spiritual powers. It also was translated into English, but it's not available. But in your tape set, there are one tape called The Meditation, which explains as best as possible all the processes that are involved in that. You can order it for $15 in German. There's another book called the Om, O-M. Om means creation. And they refer to it over there as the Book of Books. I'm not sure of the price at this point. It's probably around $100, $125. It's in German. It's 600 pages long. And it is... it's a number of things. It's a huge book. It's kind of a rewrite of the Old Testament, for one thing. It contains all the most important laws and commandments according to the laws of creation, rules of order, guiding lines, aims, task of the human being, both in the material and spiritual life. It was compiled together kind of like a mutual thing between Ptah and Billy. And then there's the prophecies. It's $25. It's, of course, prophetical statements and prophecies of coming events on earth beginning in 1976, some of which I've already gone over with you. In a few I will just kind of write down there in your exhibit on the prophecies. Then there's a book called the Psyche. The Psyche is a very interesting book. It's kind of a handbook for learning to understand your mind, your psyche, and the internal workings of it. It's $15. And then, of course, there are the Semyasi reports or contact notes, which we've just gone over on these past 8 tapes. You can buy those in their German form also, all 1,800 pages of it. and I don't know what the price of those currently is at the moment, or if they even have them all available. So all the books are available in German. Billy's address is listed in your exhibit, so feel free to write and get any of those that you like. And happy reading.